Habib has made a literary contribution to the country's popular discourse. His latest offering is called South Africa's Suspended Revolution, Hopes and Prospects. Now, it already has tongues wagging, I can tell you that. Not only has the book garnered enough interest to warrant a second print run, but it will also be published in Afrikaans, Sesotho and isiZulu. The translated abridged editions are due for release early next year. Now, for more on this, we're joined in studio by Professor Adam Habib. Professor, good morning to you, and must I say congratulations, because this is a second print run, isn't it?
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Now, let's look at the title of the book, South Africa's Suspended Revolution, Hopes and Prospects. Why?
Well, the big question is that we had a whole series of hopes and visions in 1994. Some of that has been achieved. We've deracialized our political sphere. We've, the black population has been included into the political system. But there have been some significant failures on the economic front. There's a lot of inequality still available in our society. The society seems very polarized. There's a lot of factionalism in the ruling party. And so the book is about what are the successes, what are the failures, what are the mistakes we made, and what can we learn.
But what do you want to achieve? What is the main aim of the book?
The main aim is to open up a conversation. One of the things that worries me about South Africa and the popular discourse is that we talk past each other. There is if you like, a dialogue of the deaf. Business says one thing, Labour says another, the state says a third, and nobody is actually engaging each other on the real issues. And so what this book is about is trying to open up the discourse that says we don't have to be as polarized as we seem to be. There are a whole series of possibilities in between, and if we bring together and think through the issues, we could actually come up with a collective consensual agenda.
Is it only the discourse in the South African public that triggered the book, or what else was there?
Well, it's partly that, and it's partly the very nature of the way we debate policies. The actual policies themselves are very polarized, even within the ruling party. What you have is the National Development Plan, you have the New Growth Path. The president says that they're one and the same thing, but if you read them, they're actually not. They're fundamentally defined by different philosophical tenets. And so what we need first within the ruling party is a much more coherent agenda. And then between the ruling party, government, and other players, role players, including business and labor, we need a conversation that is more coherent. And that just hasn't happened over the last couple of years.
Who's the target audience? Is it the ordinary man in the street, Joe Soap and Seppo and Koos and everybody else? Are they always academics?
Well, it's not simply written for academics. So even the English version, I've tried to articulate and write it in a way. Now, I'm not so sure I've entirely succeeded, but I have tried to write it for a broader audience than simply academics. It is directed at activists. It is directed at CEOs. It is directed at union leaders and government ministers. But the idea of actually translating it in an abridged version in isiZulu and Sesotho and Selebo and Afrikaans is really to open up and to make sure that people who aren't normally part of the public discourse, in the mainstream anyway, are brought into the public discourse. And that's why we've really gone for the translated versions.
Does it offer solutions?
It does, actually. There's a whole chapter 7, because one of the big criticisms of academics is we do lots of critique and we don't talk about solutions. And what chapter 7 is about is, if I was advising the ministers or if I was advising CEOs, it does say this is what we should be arguing for, and this is how you can position the debate in a way that gets beyond the dialogue of the deaf.
Yeah, because a number of people are saying, there's lots of discourse and there's lots of discussion and it never offers solutions. But you say your book is completely different to that.
Well, it's trying to. And I'm not saying that it offers all of the solutions, but it tries to open up the solutions, and it makes a set of suggestions, which is precisely what I think we need to do.
How long did it take you to complete it?
It took me the actual writing about 6 months, but this is a book that has been long in the making. I just haven't had the chance, and about a year ago I had the privilege of being 6 months in Oxford, and I used the 6 months to finish the book.
Now, you had a discussion last night in Durban about the book. Who were the panelists, and what did you discuss?
Well, we had a number of two panelists in Durban, Kolani and Patrick Bond. Both of them were really, Patrick Bond is from the Centre for Civil Society. And what we discussed actually was about the challenges that confront South Africa. We discussed the issue of whether South Africa is at the moment of a revolution, or whether we should be looking at trying to bridge the divide between our various partners and create a much more coherent agenda and a much more cohesive national plan. We spoke a lot about inequality. and how inequality has polarized our society and how necessary it is, not simply to address poverty, because that's important, but unless we also deal with inequality, we will never be able to heed the divides of our past. And that's the big challenge that confronts any of the policy programs, including the National Development Plan.
But according to you, what are some of the main challenges facing South Africa? You mentioned earlier that we have a dialogue of the deaf.
Well, I think that there's 2 or 3. I mean, the big question is, why do we have a service delivery crisis? It should be borne in mind that the Reserve Bank works very well. SARS works very well. Aaron Motsoaledi ensured that in the last 4 years, we put 2 million HIV/AIDS patients on antiretrovirals in a context of a service delivery. How is it that we can do some things right and then not make other things happen? And that's what the book confronts and says, that we need to start making some hard choices. We need to start learning the lessons of what exists in SARS and health and apply them to places like education, etc. But it also speaks about inequality. And it worries about inequality. It says we actually have to take it seriously. The corporate sector doesn't take it seriously. And I think sometimes government ducks the question. They think that because you're going after poverty, automatically you'll deal with inequality. And inequality doesn't always get dealt with, because inequality is about the difference between the rich and the poor. And we've seen in the last 20 years the divide between the rich and poor increase. And then there is the issue of political cohesiveness. We need political leadership, and we haven't had sufficient political leadership from government, but also corporates and the union movement.
Professor, thank you so much for joining us in studio.
It's a pleasure.
That was Habib, the author of the book South Africa's Suspended Revolution, Hopes and Prospects, and he's also the Vice-Chancellor at Wits University.